Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty, proudly serving Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties. Call 407-790-9957 or visit WeSellOrlando.net. What's happening tonight, fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy joining you here. We're recording this on Wednesday, May the 9th. And, well, you know, I thought we were winding things down, Brian, but this football situation just doesn't want to let it go in May. This is amazing. This is truly, we just can't let Scott Frost go, can we?
Well, I've said for a long time now that I think this whole, you know, the word national championship and that whole debate and talk and this whole UCF debate is not going to go away. It's still going to be on someone's lips until UCF loses a game in the regular season. And then that's going to take another 3 or 4 days. People will tease UCF for losing, and they'll tease them about, oh, they can't win the national championship now. And then after that, this will finally die. But that might not be until like late September.
It's coming back. I'll guarantee you it comes back like 4 days later. Like, well, that's okay. We already won our national championship. we've got to talk about that. We're going to talk about baseball a little bit later with Murph. Lopez is not with us. Because I actually spoke to him earlier today. He's in Tampa covering the American Athletic Conference softball tournament, which is being hosted by USF. Begins Thursday, so by the time you actually hear this, it'll be time for you to watch that on the American Digital Network, where Eric Lopez will be calling the games. He'll be doing play-by-play for ADN on that. But he did join me to talk about UCF heading into the tournament, preview it a little bit, so we'll be getting in on that. And we'll also be talking about some of the other things that are taking place, checking up with tennis. Women's tennis is getting ready for their first round of the NCAAs. Golf is getting ready. We're going to check in also with rowing and track and field as well. But let's dive in. Oh, before we get started, just a brief reminder for you to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you can get all the latest news, analysis, and opinion on UCF sports. You can follow us on Facebook at Black and Gold Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Brian is at Spokes_Murphy. Eric is at Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter as well. And by the way, if you haven't yet, make sure you leave us a rating on our podcast here. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. All right, let's dive in, Brian. So here's the story from this week. We're going to lead off with the Scott Frost controversy having to do with UCF getting their national championship rings. All right, so the staff, the coaching staff, they all had their championship rings sent to them. It should also be noted that they also had their championship bonuses sent to them some time ago. And in an article on USA Today by George Schroeder, he asks, did Central Florida, notice Central Florida, go too far with its national championship celebration? So he asked Scott Frost about this, and I'm actually pulling up the quote here. Let's see here.
It's
now
it's a quote in every bedroom of every UCF student right now.
It is now. All right. So
sure.
he also talked to Danny White in this article to be fair, and he kind of mentions that White contends and Frost agrees that UCF did not really have a legitimate opportunity to reach the playoff. This is what Frost said. In the final rankings, they were set at number 12. Let's see. What Frost suggests there was an invisible ceiling in place. Frost calls it, quote, almost criminal, end quote. Frost also said, quote, I completely get behind their argument. I do think it was almost criminal how low they kept UCF in the rankings, and I think it was intentional. But at the end of the day, the playoff system is that the national champion is the team that wins the playoff. Schroeder continues by writing, if that sounds like Frost is not completely on board the national title train, it's because he's not. Quote from Frost, quote, all I'll say is if we had stayed there, I would have had a hard time getting behind it. I think it was smart by them because it's kept UCF in the media and in the conversation. But, like our rings, I kind of wish my ring just said undefeated season and Peach Bowl champion, end quote. So that got picked up on social media. Brandon Hellwig sent it out. And Brandon was throwing a little shade at Scott Frost here, saying, Scott Frost, now part of the establishment, discredits UCF's national championship and even says he dislikes his ring. Cue the outrage machine. So,
God.
So off we go. And, okay, so we're recording this. So we're recording this on Wednesday, May the 9th in the evening. Thursday morning, Frost is actually going on Mike Bianchi's radio show at 8:15 Eastern Time. So by the time you hear this podcast, that may already be over. I definitely recommend you check that out to see what Scott Frost says. But in the meantime, I was a little kind of taken aback by this, not because of Frost talking about the rings, but I think when you and I'll get your opinion on this in a minute, Brian, because I know you're itching to get in on this. Mm-hmm. I think what he's doing by saying that is he's casting aspersions on the effort of his players at UCF and his coaching staff. And, we can talk about the merits of UCF's national championship claim all we want, but and I wrote on Black and Gold Banneret. I kind of stepped into, were I in Scott Frost's shoes. Here's what I would have said as an answer to that question. And basically, I took the tack, and you can read it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. That hey, I'm, we were national champions at UCF, and it's a tribute to to the players that I had who are all amazing. It's not UCF's fault that they weren't in the playoff. We did everything that we were asked of, and then some. Plus, winning games in 11 consecutive weeks after the hurricane, beating Auburn. Kind of went in on the national college football SEC media a little bit, and that the system is not a fair system, and that it could screw Nebraska if things break a certain way, the way it's set up now, with it basically being a 4-team BCS instead of a 2-team BCS like we had before. So that was my sort of take on that. So my thing is, what say you about this? What is? It's obviously this is kind of a there's a part of this that understandably is a little bit of a media creation, but what did you think about what Frost said, what he actually said, and how it's being interpreted by UCF fans? Well,
I mean, the interpretation is predictable. I mean, because it does come off as a slight. So UCF fans are upset. I mean, I think a lot of UCF fans are still upset, even though they shouldn't be. They're upset that Frost isn't here anymore. So that's part of it. Now he's gone. He's sort of talking, a little bit like talking about them when he's gone. It just sort of feels, it upsets them. I understand that. I don't really have a problem with what he actually said, because he's really doesn't owe that to UCF to say that yes, we were national champions or anything like that. He actually did stick up for UCF and saying that the system kept them out for so long and it was unjustified with what they did. I mean, that at least was in defense of UCF, and it's true, and that's true, and it's a good point. And so people aren't playing that up enough. They're more about talking about how he, has disparaged UCF by saying it's not really national championship, and I don't like the ring or whatever. Well, he didn't say that. He just said he wanted the ring to look different. He didn't say he didn't like the ring. He just said he wanted to look different. We're putting words in his mouth because we're upset at Scott Frost.
He said, to be fair, I kind of wish my ring just said undefeated season and Peach Bowl champion.
Yeah.
But here's my question. Does he owe it to his players?
Well, are we sure that his players don't share some sentiment there? I mean, they're all going to come out and say national champions because that's what the fan base wants to hear and everything like that. But are we sure that some of the players are like, we know that there is still like one like nationally recognized championship and it's crowned through the CFP. And, there's,
well, I think the players are looking at that, would look at this and say, yeah, of course, the system screwed us. It sucks. And you know what? We would play Alabama tomorrow in a parking lot if we could.
Yeah. And I mean, that's fine. I also think, and the reason why I'm sort of stuttering here is because I'm trying to think of a reason why I want to give some importance to this. But for me, I saw the comment and I completely glossed over it because this is a story. This is a story this is the type of story that gains traction in college football in May when there's nothing happening. Spring ball is over. Camps don't open until a few more months. We need something to fill the time.
That's fair. That this is such a May college football story.
This is like what Tony Kornheiser said a few weeks ago when people were asking him about there was a tiff between Steve Kerr and a player on the Warriors, and they asked him on his podcast why he talked about that story with Wilbon in the A block, in the first block of PTI. And he said, we need 5 stories to fill the A block, which again, it's like, yeah. So one thing, when you watch, punditry on sports media, understand that everything that's said first or said that opening block before the commercial isn't actually the most important stories. Some of it's just filler. They need to put things in there because there's not enough to talk about.
We need and in
college football, right. So we're going to talk about something. And so in college football, we got to talk about something. We can look at teams for in the fall and still react to what we saw in spring ball, but really there's nothing going on right now. So this is a fishing line out into the lake, and you pull ashore a quote and you rip it apart and you dissect it. And what does it mean? And it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't. So
why then, if you're Scott Frost, do you agree to go on a drive time morning radio show in Orlando 3 days after this happened?
I'm certain. I think we're all interested to see what he has to say, right? I mean, and I think now that he's not with UCF, that he doesn't have to hold any sort of school line, school party line. Like, I feel like this interview that he's doing tomorrow with Mike Bianchi, correct?
Correct.
Thursday, it's going to be fairly on. I would trust anything he says because he has no reason to lie about anything he's going to say about UCF. I mean, he has no reason to blow smoke. I mean, he's gone from here. So I think everything he's going to say would be true. I'm not sure why he's doing it or if he's going to apologize or that'd be sort of weird. But again, not sure what he's going to say. I am looking forward to it because I think whatever he says, you can trust him when he says it. I'd also point out too, like Nebraska will not in any way find itself in a position that UCF found itself in because with the Big Ten, if they're not in that Big Ten title game, it doesn't really matter what they really do. They're not going to be in the top 4, and there's going to be a reason for that. It's because they lost games. So it'll never affect Nebraska the way it affected UCF. But, I have no problem with what he said. I have no problem with how UCF fans have reacted. It's been a little over the top. But, again, this is fan bases for you. Fake fan bases are sort of crazy sometimes. And I think we're we are blowing it up to be a bigger story than it is, but only because there's nothing else in the world to talk about in college football right now other than looking forward to a season that's still 3 or 4 months away.
I'll leave it with this, and then we'll talk about baseball. My uncle on my wife's side, he's a former college basketball assistant coach. And he said something really interesting about team building that I was talking with him one time. He said, if you want to unify people, the most effective way to do it is to give them the same thing to hate. And in this case, I think it has been a master stroke of rallying the fan base, which, as we all know, and Eric will vouch for this, has been at times, let's say, lethargic. If you give the UCF fan base the same thing to hate, and let's call it the quote college football establishment end quote, whether or not Scott Frost is in it is immaterial, but it will rally the troops, and that's something that I think UCF has been waiting for, and that's also why I think it's another facet of why this was such a brilliant master stroke by Danny White, is he's now managed to rally the fan base around a cause, and that UCF is the standard bearer of that cause. And will it result in higher television ratings, more people coming to games? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. But it's just that it's another way, a creative way that UCF has found or managed to find traction with its fan base even more. They've modernized the football program. They've made it much more open, much more fan-friendly, given more access to people, with the videos and all that. But now, and it's obviously the style of play and everything, but now they have a galvanizing issue to take up. So it's something that's even bigger than UCF that they care about. So, all right, so let's leave it right there. Obviously, we'll be following what Frost says on the Bianchi show. Probably tweet that link out as well once it gets sent out. So that's that interview scheduled for Thursday, May the 10th. If you haven't listened to it yet, just pop on back to our Twitter feed and take a listen, and take a look at the article that I put up about what I thought Scott Frost should have said. All right,
it is a good take. I mean, you sort of write from the point of view.
Thank you, Brian. That's very kind of you.
For a topic I don't care about in the slightest. It's a good article because you do a decent job of trying to write from
damning with faint praise.
Exactly, but it's no. I like the article. The topic is fluff.
Look, it's May. We got to find some way of doing it.
Exactly, and you do a nice job of like, this is what Frost should have said, and it's very detailed. It's got a good link to it. I thought the structure was good. It's a very good article. I'm not just saying that to say that. If I was really trying to lie to you, I'd say that this topic meant something.
Well, it's up there. Make sure you check it out at blackandgoldbanneret.com. All right. Speaking of teams that are playing right now, it is. Let's take a look at baseball. They are coming off. In conference, 2 out of 3 at Houston ain't bad. Mm-hmm. Especially when they won the first 2. Again, they managed to somehow not win the Sunday game, which just annoys the living crap out of me, as you know. But hey, like I said, 2 out of 3 on the road ain't bad. They're coming off, however, a loss down at FAU on Tuesday. 11-8 was the final in that game. So the Knights have split their last 4. They actually had won 4 in a row prior to losing their last 2, if you want to look at it that way, if you're a glass half empty guy. But so right now they stand at what's the record? Oh, there it is, 32-17, and no conference game this weekend because this is the odd conference weekend out. So the Knights welcome Oklahoma out of the Big 12 to John Juliano Park Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the Knights are, so while everyone else catches up with UCF, who right now are at 11-10 in the conference, 3 games back in the loss column to Houston for first place in the American. They have this big out-of-conference series with Oklahoma. First, Brian, let's look back at the weekend with Houston and then the follow-up against FAU. How are they feeling coming off of this? It's one thing, is it glass half empty or glass half full? Is it, hey, we beat Houston 2 out of 3 and they're ranked on the road, or is it, man, we could have swept them and we didn't?
No, I think this is glass half full. Certainly. I mean, you're going on the road against Houston. You have to remember, coming into that series, Houston had won 7 consecutive conference games, including a sweep of a top 10 team on the road, and then swept Wichita State as well. Like, Houston was the hottest team in the conference, bar none.
Right.
So to go there and take the first 2, really the both ends of a doubleheader, which is, I think, more difficult, was something that it almost made the Sunday game feel like gravy if they had won it. Like, winning 1 would have been pretty decent. You would have been sort of perturbed, but winning 1 would have been great. Winning 2 is the ultimate goal, and winning 3 is just a flood of gravy. So I think they felt pretty good. And the loss to FAU it's not awful. I mean, FAU has an RPI of 31, which they've been playing very well this year, and UCF's RPI is still at 29 as of today. So I think coming into the series against Oklahoma, a team with an RPI of, I think, 40 or 41 now. Mm-hmm. It's another big series, and I think this team, I'm interested to see what I get as far as responses tomorrow. I'm going to go talk to Lovelady and a couple of the players on Thursday afternoon at the park. And because UCF really doesn't have a shot at repeating as regular season American Athletic Conference champions like they did last year. They're just too far behind, and they just only have 3 conference games left. There's too many teams to jump over them. There's too many teams that they need to jump over, some of which have 4 or 6 conference games left. So it's just too much. But I think for this team, the goal shouldn't be the conference regular season championship. It should be, we just got to win, because right now they're pretty much on the bubble, or just barely off the bubble in the NCAA tournament, but it's not safe. They're not in a safe space in the NCAA tournament, which is what the ultimate goal really is.
Well, they've clinched, obviously, the spot in the American tournament. This is kind of such a weird week, because they are the team that's, has only they are the only team right now. Well, they and Houston are the only teams that have played 21 conference games at this point. And I'm looking up and down at the standings, and you see the overall records, right? Everyone except for Cincinnati, who, by the way, is 10-8 in the league, ahead of UCF, Tulane, and Memphis, they all have 29 wins, at least. All right, so, one more to 30. We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams with 30 wins in the league, and possibly 7 if Cincinnati gets hot. But, again, that speaks to, I think, how good the conference is this year. So, what is the best case scenario right now for UCF as they end the regular season, or as they look for seeding in the conference tournament? Because right now they're sitting in 6th. They would face East Carolina in their first game in the conference tournament. Remember, it's a double elimination tournament, so all kinds of crazy stuff can happen. But they would be in a side of the bracket that has USF, East Carolina, and then themselves in Tulane. So, is that where you want to be right now? Are they fine? Are they actually okay just standing pat in that cluster?
Well, so UCF has only 1 conference series left. It's next weekend. It's at home, and it's against Tulane, who is 7-11 on the year and 22-27 overall. And
not
because no, I mean, it's a series that UCF, if they really wanted to, and their RPI is very high. I mean, well, high in a bad sense. That if UCF really, I think that's the kind of series that, like, if UCF needs a sweep, that's a sweep they probably should get at home against Tulane on your final weekend of the regular season. It's something that you might look at that series like, they may need to throw all 3 games here. But I think really, I don't know if this team can really look forward to their conference tournament positioning, because 3 of the 4 teams in front of them, 3 of the 5 teams in front of them have 6 conference games remaining. UCF only has 3. So it really depends. Their positioning really depends more on what do those other teams do with their 6 games left, and we only have our 3? And I think UCF's worst case scenario is they stay at 6 because they do have an easy final conference, a relatively easy final conference series, and Tulane is actually the team right next to them, right below them in the standings. So basically, if they win that series, they're going to be at no worse than 6th. But if they sweep that series and then maybe some other teams fall, they could work themselves up to like 4, 3 or 4. It's just, I don't know if they care. And I think if I asked, Coach Lovelady, he would give you what he usually gives you when you ask about, opponents or seeding or where are they playing, home and road. He's always going to give you the same sentiment, which is we play against the ball. And that sounds boring. It's also huge coach speak, but his players have bought into it. And it's true. Like in baseball, you don't play against the uniform or whatever. You play against what the ball does, and they're playing against the ball. So that's a line they're riding. And I think just for this week and for the rest of the season, it's not so much about the conference tournament as it is positioning yourself for the NCAA tournament. And this non-conference, late non-conference series against Oklahoma is rather intriguing.
Yeah. What do we know about Oklahoma coming in? I know that you mentioned that their RPI is around 40, which is actually below UCF. We may look at that and say, probably at the beginning of the season, we were like, wow, okay, Oklahoma coming into town, all right, the big conference team late in the season, that could probably help our RPI. It may end up hurting UCF's RPI a little bit. But what do we know about them, and what do we expect in this series? Well,
this Oklahoma series was looking great. About 2 weeks ago, or a little more so, when Oklahoma was just running through the Big 12, and then they hit the skids in a really hard way. I think they lost 7 of 9 before they just came back and they swept Kansas State. So they're sort of recovering a little bit. In the Big 12, they're down to 40. They were up near 10 in the RPI. It's still a big series. It's still going to help you a little bit if you take 2 out of 3. It's one of those things. It's not like they're facing USC upstate, which some really really bad team. Like, this is still going to help you if you win the series. But Oklahoma,
Delaware State, it should be mentioned, is last in the in Division I in RPI at number 297.
Okay. It's not like that. And even though Oklahoma is below UCF in the RPI, it's still a pretty big series against a big, power, quote unquote, power conference opponent. Although the AAC in baseball is totally a power conference now. And I'll tell you one thing about Oklahoma that is fascinating. So they have basically the backup quarterback, the guy who should be the starting quarterback for Oklahoma this year, is on the baseball team. And the thing is, he's a redshirt sophomore. His name is Kyler Murray. He was Baker Mayfield's backup at Oklahoma last year, and he's been playing football and baseball at Oklahoma for his first 2 years. 2 years since he's a redshirt sophomore. Well, because he's a redshirt sophomore, he could possibly be drafted this year. He's had a really good season at Oklahoma on the diamond. His bat tools really picked up. He's a really fast kid. He kind of looks like Johnny Manziel on the football field. So he's got some huge speed, a good arm, and he's really learned how to hit the ball a lot better and strike out less. And he could be drafted in the first 2 or 3 rounds, maybe even the high second round. And so Oklahoma football might actually lose their quarterback to the MLB draft in about a month. But we don't know yet. I think it's interesting because maybe he decides to come back and play again, because he doesn't have to leave. He can come back. He'll only be a junior this fall.
Right.
He can come back and play and be the starter for Oklahoma in football. And yet we'll see him on the diamond here over the weekend. And we can point to him and say, yeah, I saw him play. I saw him play baseball, but I saw him play.
Interesting. All right. So we'll get a good look at him. We'll get a good look at Oklahoma. Hopefully if they heat up, that'll actually help out the RPI down the stretch. So the series looks like this. I had it a second ago. Where'd it go? There it is. So Friday, 6:30, Saturday, 6:30, Sunday, 1 p.m. I think the weather is going to hold up. So I don't foresee any start time changes, but they're all at John Juliano Park, and they'll be on UCFnights.tv. All right. let's take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to set the table for the American Athletic Conference softball tournament, which is coming up this weekend. Starts actually Thursday. UCF is it's a single elimination tournament. UCF is will be playing Memphis on the first round in the 4-5 matchup, and Eric Lopez is down there. He's doing the games for the American Digital Network, and he checked in with me earlier to sort of set the table for the American Athletic Conference softball tournament. So we'll have Eric when we get back, and we'll check in with golf, tennis, track and field, and everything else when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Back after this. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is brought to you by the Unger Real Estate Group, powered by eXp Realty. Sam Unger and his team proudly serve Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties, specializing in buying, selling, and new construction. Sam is a proud UCF graduate, class of 2006, and he's such a dedicated Knight fan that right now, if you work with him as your realtor, he will donate a portion of his commission to the UCF Football Excellence Fund in your name. So if you're ready to buy a new home or sell your current home, upgrade or downsize, Sam and his team have you covered so you can find the right home at the right price in the right location. So give him a call right now at 407-790-9957. Again, that's 407-790-9957. Or visit on the web at WeSellOrlando.net. Again, that's WeSellOrlando.net. You can also reach them on Facebook at facebook.com/WeSellOrlando. Get in touch with the Unger Real Estate Group today and make finding your dream home a reality.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy with you. blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, and Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Let's switch gears over to softball as their tournament is happening this coming weekend. Goes Thursday through Saturday down in Tampa, the American Athletic Conference softball tournament. Eric Lopez is down there. Actually, he's calling the games for the American Digital Network. He's calling 6 games in the next 2 days, all the quarters and the semis. The championship game is noon Sunday or noon Saturday, I should say, on ESPN2. But Lopez is down there, and he will be covering everything. So a little bit earlier, he called in, and I wanted to get the lay of the land from the UCF side, and then also see how UCF or what their shot is at the postseason, based on how they might do in the tournament. So here's Eric Lopez. All right, joining me now, Eric Lopez from Tampa, with the site of the American Athletic Conference Softball Championship. Begins Thursday, May the 10th, goes through May the 12th, hosted by USF, and Eric is there in adversarial territory, covering the tournament for the American Digital Network. Eric, what's going on over there? How's everything looking over there? Are they ready to go or what?
Everybody's ready to go. Beautiful weather. I mean, there is not a cloud to be found, which is great, especially after going through this last year in Greenville, where the tournament got misty rain the whole tournament. So I think everybody's happy with the weather. I could tell you that every team got in early, even earlier than usual. Like I know for a fact Connecticut, for example, they flew straight from Tulsa to Tampa. Wichita State's been here since Thursday because they played USF in the regular season finale. East Carolina's been here since Sunday because they bussed from UCF to here right after the game on Sunday. So everybody's happy, I think, with Tampa and the weather, and everybody's getting their practices in today, obviously, as we record this. So I think everybody's ready. Everybody's excited. Everybody knows what's on the line and what's at stake. So it's the best time of year.
Yeah. Well, we've got, here's the situation for UCF right now. Obviously, this is a single elimination tournament. And, I had, you probably saw this. I had one of the folks on the, or Kevin Reyes, right, on the UCFsports.com message board. I told him, I said, I really wish that the softball tournament was double elimination, just like baseball. And you and I have talked about this before. But he brought up a good point. He's like, but we really only have one pitcher, UCF does, in Aaliyah White. So my question to you is, here comes UCF as the 4 seed. And by the way, even though they're the 4 seed, let's not forget the fact that UCF actually finished just 2 games behind USF for first place. USF finished 14-7, Houston 13-8, and UCF tied with Wichita at 12-9.
Sure.
So the way this tournament actually shakes out for UCF could be quite favorable to them if they can throw Aaliyah White 3 straight days, right?
Absolutely. Well, she's used to it now. I mean, she did that this past weekend against East Carolina, so I don't think that's as big of a factor. And by the way, it's tied for 3rd. If you really want to, kind of break it down, it's tied for 3rd in the 4th best conference in college softball. I think that, and I think that's going to be one of the narratives this week, Jeff, is not only in our broadcast, but throughout the week, is we're pushing the narrative that this is the 4th best conference in college softball. You and Murph are going to talk about how baseball is the 3rd or 4th best conference in college baseball, and you see them getting rewarded by teams being ranked and probably getting 5-6 bids in, where in softball, they're kind of like glaciers. They're slow to understand that. I mean, certain networks believe that the only college softball that exists is in the Southeastern Conference, okay? So there's a lot of perception and biasness going on in college softball that people don't realize. This is the 4th best league. This is way better than the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's better than the Big Ten, and that's not an opinion. That's a fact. That's stats telling you that. Everybody's got great wins in this league over major programs, and yet everybody kind of treats it like, well, it's maybe a 2-bid league. No, it should be a 4-bid league, quite frankly, if people do their homework. But the sport is slow. People, I know people talk about the college football being biased towards Power 5. I think it's actually worse in softball. I actually think it's way worse in softball. And I don't think, because people don't do their homework in softball. You may not agree with the football committee's opinion, but they do their homework. You may not agree with it, but they do homework. Softball, I think there's questions whether they do their homework or not. I think people just kind of look at RPI numbers and look at the brand names and just put them in. And I've written about this on FastPitchNews.com where I break down how teams do against the top 50 and top 100. For example, do you realize, I don't know how many people would realize this, because people focus on UCF's RPI. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent, but why not? It's a podcast. So they have a 61 RPI, right? So everybody jumps to conclusions on that. Yet, if you break down the numbers, they have more top 50 wins than Texas, whose RPI is 39, for example. People wouldn't grasp that. They have more top 25 wins than Texas. UCF has 3 wins against top 25 teams in the RPI. Texas has 1. That's just one example of many. The thing that hurts UCF from an RPI standpoint is they have a couple of losses that does not good on the resume against the Princeton, but they didn't throw Aaliyah White in those games. So you're being punished for games, and they were not 100% in full health, as we've talked about. So people just don't do their homeworks, and that's my biggest gripe, is just don't look at an RPI number and call it a day and go to lunch. Do your research, do your top 50s, top 25s. Now, look, I think at the end of the day it'll play itself out, but I think that's what this sport needs, is to open their eyes. There's more good softball than ever before in this sport, and it's not just in the Southeastern Conference or in the Pac-12 like some of the people that cover this and the main networks want you to believe.
Yeah, well, here's an interesting thing. I'm looking at the latest RPI, which came out Monday, May the 6th, and all 12 SEC schools are in the top 23 in the RPI. And just to give you some perspective on that, the number of Pac-12 schools, now Oregon and UCLA are numbers 1 and 2 respectively, but even though the Pac-12 has 4 of the top 7, let's see, 5, 6. They only have 6 in the top 24. So that gives you an idea of how much they've dove in on the SEC. And I should say, I know I mentioned 12. Ole Miss, is not all 12 because
Correct.
you have 14, but Ole Miss is 34th.
Correct.
And then you have to go for a while to find the next one. But that shows you the bias you're talking about.
But here's one of the major issues in softball right now. You cover every sport, so one of the biggest storylines going in on Selection Sunday night is going to be Missouri. For those that don't know the story, Missouri is one game over 500 for the regular season. Think about that, one game over 500.
Yeah, 28 and 27. They're 23rd in the RPI.
Yes. They bought themselves out of – they were supposed to play Wichita State last week in the regular season, 2 games at Wichita State. They paid Wichita State $5,000 to get out of those 2 games. They added Arkansas Pine Bluff to get those 2 wins so they could stay at 500 because you have to be 500 to be eligible for the NCAA tournament. That's why they're 1 game over 500. They missed the SEC tournament, which is they're hosting. And yet, only in softball,
really?
Jeff. Yeah,
That's
and only in it's embarrassing. And yet, Jeff, only in softball is they would put them in the NCAA field. As you know, this was basketball. If this was football, they wouldn't even sniff it.
Yeah, you're right. Nonetheless, the situation that UCF finds himself in fighting with some of these teams for potentially an at-large. I mean, if UCF wins the tournament, then all of this is a moot point. And I think UCF has just as good a shot to win it as anybody. Like we said, they're tied at third in the standings, even though they are the 4th seed. So they come and they play the 5th seed Memphis in the first round. Game is set for 4 p.m. on Thursday, and you can watch all these games on the American Digital Network if you go to theamerican.org. Eric, you'll be calling these games. Let's start actually for you on the UCF side with just a preview of this Memphis game coming up. Obviously, second to last game of the first session before USF plays, who's the top seed, by the way, plays number 8 UConn. What's going to be the outlook for UCF in this game as they start the tournament against the 5 seed Memphis?
Well, UCF played them in Orlando earlier this year, won 2 out of 3. Memphis is a type of team that plays with a lot of slappers. They like to have speed. They like to put pressure on your defense. So I think all eyes are going to be UCF has to be sound defensively because Memphis wants to get on base, slap the ball, manufacture runs. That's their game. They've got a really good pitcher in the senior and Molly Smith. Mm-hmm. They've beaten Ole Miss. Speaking of which, you mentioned them earlier. They're a really good ball club. They're having their best year in many years there, and they're a team that's capable. They've got veterans. So I think that's going to be the key in that matchup is how does UCF play defensively well. And then, they hit Molly and they hit Memphis pitching pretty well. But it's a new year, as you mentioned. It's a 1-game deal. And, I think getting off to a good start is imperative for both teams because I don't think either team in this stadium, this is not a home run park. It's 230 to center, 210 to left center and right center. So it's more of a gap type of ballpark, so that favors if you put a ball down, you could get some extra bases. So I think it's get off to a good start, play well defensively clean, which has been the story for UCF all year. And obviously you got to hope that Aaliyah is on her game and then don't give any free passes. And, timely hitting. I mean, this is not brain surgery. I mean, in postseason, and all these you execute with runners on base becomes even more imperative. So I think that's what you're looking at. And you can't worry about what your future outlook is as far as the postseason. You got to take it 1 game at a time. I think if UCF doesn't win this game, I don't think they're going to make the tournament. I think they have to probably get to the final to have a shot to get in, probably win it. Obviously win it. You don't have to worry about it. But I think it's a very even matchup. I mean, I got to tell you, this is my 4th year in the American. This is my 12th conference tournament I've covered going back to the 2007 Conference USA tournament. I don't remember being part of a league this deep. There's this deep where there's 6 teams that have won 30 games or more. You have the 6th seed is the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, who are the 2-time defending conference tournament champions, and, oh, by the way, have swept Oklahoma State this year. That gives you an idea how deep this league is. Right. East Carolina's beaten James Madison. UConn, who's the 8th seed, has beaten number 7 ranked Texas A&M. So, I mean, that's how good this league is.
Looking at the team numbers too, Eric, this first game for UCF is going to be such a tough one because Memphis is the top hitting team in the conference. They're hitting 306 as a team. No other team is hitting 300, is hitting above the 300 mark. And then if UCF is able to get past Memphis in the first round, they would likely face USF, who's playing the 8 seed UConn. You never know, but USF is the number 2 team in the conference in hitting at 294 this year. By the way, it should also be mentioned that Memphis is a terror on the base paths. They've stolen 85 bases as a team. That's by far and away the most in the league. I mentioned earlier Aaliyah White going out there. What's going to be the key for her in this matchup against, like I said, the best hitting team in the conference?
Throw strikes, get ahead of hitters, keep them off the base paths. You don't want to give walks. You don't want to, that's going to be the key. And again, defensively, they got to be at the right position, make the right plays, because Memphis depends on their speed. That's how they get on base, and they want to put you on your heels. So that's a big factor. That when Memphis beat UCF, that's how they did it. But if you know how you do it, you overpower them, you get outs. If they can't get on base, they can't hurt you. That's the thing. So, if she's on her game, and she's pitched well against USF, she pitched well against USF the last time they were here. I think that helps. I think it helps that they were just here 2 weeks ago, so they're familiar with this field. So. Look, I mean, I get your point about the whole single elimination. It's anything can hand them. It's random, as we've talked about on this podcast with softball and baseball. It's random, so you just never know. You just got to play your best. And I think this year in particular, there are no gimmies. This is not like years past where you're like, man, we got a favorable matchup. There's no gimmies. It's the team that wins this conference tournament is going to earn it because they're going to play 3 good games. It's as simple as that. And like I said, I can make the argument for 6 to 7 teams. I think 6 teams that can win this conference very easily. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. So they just got to play their game. Play well, and I think the fact that they're familiar with this area will help them and maybe some of those nerves, because as you know, the first games always are the toughest because you got to get those nerves out and realize, hey, it's just another game. I actually think if UCF were to get past that game, I think they might be in good shape, but you got to get past that first game, and Memphis is a veteran team with a senior pitcher, so you just never know. It's going to be an interesting game to say the least.
Yeah, and if UCF gets through Memphis, like we said, then they have USF.
Right.
The Knights lost 2 out of 3 in Tampa when they met in the regular season, including a 2-1 in the rubber game. That was back at the last weekend of April, so not that long ago. And for USF, the key I think is also going to be the pitching. They're the top seed, but that all that said, they are probably as vulnerable a top seed in any of the conference tournaments that we see here as we head toward the end of the season. So, this is going to be the key opportunity for UCF to play a team that's 24-9 at home in the conference tournament, but they're finished only 2 games out. And boy, so you talked about it all the time that college softball just turns on a flip of a coin. Sometimes we talked about the 2 UConn games with the weather. UCF wins those 2 games. They're tied for first with USF. We've seen the walk-off games, the 2 losses in the walk-off games against Wichita State.
If they win those 2, you could argue they're 2 swings away from being the 1 seed in the conference champions right now.
Being all alone as the 1 seed.
Right.
So
2 to 3 swings. I mean, that's how close this league is.
Right. So my question to you is, what would you say is the percentage chance that UCF wins the tournament outright? And then what would you say is the percentage chance that UCF gets into the tournament if they reach the semifinal and or the final?
I think they got to reach the final because you would have beaten the 1 seed, I would assume, in that scenario.
Right.
That would be a nice quality top 40 win.
And in a way, they would need UConn to. They do need USF to beat UConn because if UConn all of a sudden has a great day,
it helps the RPI, right? Yeah. It helps your numbers and all that stuff if that's were to take place. And if you get to the final, you're going to be on ESPN2, which means it's a lot of exposure. And you don't know what's going on in the other conferences, in the other sports, so like in the other conferences. Like Oregon State, for example, is a team that's a 500 team that if they lose 2 out of 3 this weekend to Utah, they're not eligible. So that could open up a spot. So it's hard to handicap that. In my opinion, I strongly believe they have to make the final. I don't think if they lose in the opening round or even lose in the semis, I don't know if it's in the cards for them to make it in. Not saying that they don't deserve to be in because I've already broken down their resume, but unfortunately, Jeff, the committee and the way the sport is right now, it is very favoritism to 2 major conferences, and they're not where we haven't grown up yet and realize where the sport is. You know the analogy where players, sometimes the game is too fast for them?
Yeah.
I feel that for the committee, this sport has grown too fast for them. I think they're still thinking this is 1995 and that there's only, a handful of teams that are very good, and they haven't realized that there's really good softball in the American Conference. There's really good softball in other conferences, and this sport, there's more than more than 60 teams can make the field. You don't need teams that are 500 overall to make the tournament. So that's why, like college baseball, if college baseball was running college softball, I feel like UCF would be in right now, because they wouldn't just look at the RPI, they would look at the body of work. And I think Houston in baseball is the perfect example. I've made that comparison. Baseball for Houston, they don't have a great resume RPI. I think the RPI is in the 50s, but a lot of the baseball people have them in because they realize, hey, they're in one of the best leagues in the conference. And they're, again, I got to remember, UCF won 12 games in the fourth best conference in college softball. They have beaten the SEC regular season champion. They have beaten, which was Florida. They've beaten Long Beach State, which is a top 20 team. I mean, in any other sport, it would be a no-brainer. But unfortunately, we are what we are. As far as the conference tournament, I think it's an even, you have to make USF the favorite. They're the home team. They're really good. Gina Korick, the freshman pitcher, is phenomenal. I think they're the favorites. I think Houston maybe is playing the best softball coming into this tournament. I think they have the best pitcher in the conference, in Savannah Hebner, personally.
And she's tops in the conference in the ERA too, 1.07 in 210 innings. That's unbelievable.
She leads the nation in shutouts with 12. So I don't know you're better at math than I am. I mean, I would say though that everybody's kind of in that 25% range. Everybody slices the pie. Like I would say Connecticut and East Carolina are the longest shots, but I can honestly say I would make USF the slight favorite with Houston, and then from 3 to 6, I think they're even, and I think they're about maybe 5%, 10% off from the leaders. If I don't know if that math works, but from a pie standpoint, but I think it's that good. I think it's that competitive league. This is not a league where, I can pick one or two teams to win it and everybody else has no. This, I'm telling you, do not be surprised if you see Memphis win this league. Don't be surprised if you see Tulsa win this league. I think UCF can win this league this week. I think it's really, and I wouldn't be shocked if we have a big upset where they're East Carolina. Maybe they've beaten Houston this year. Connecticut's got good young pitching. That would be the biggest upset if UConn were to beat USF, but they'll play the games and we'll see what happens.
All right, so it's single elimination. Again, the tournament starts with all 4 quarterfinals Thursday, May the 10th. In Tampa. It's all on the American Digital Network. The first game starts at 10 a.m. That's the 3 Wichita State against the 6 Tulsa. And then they go 10, 12:30 in the first session. And then the second session, starting with UCF, the 4 seed against number 5 Memphis, is at 4 p.m. on Thursday on the American Digital Network. And that's followed by the 1 seed USF against the 8 seed UConn. And just to keep you updated on the schedule, the semifinals on Friday are at 2 and 4:30. Championship game scheduled for Saturday at noon, and that will be on ESPN2. By the way, the semifinals on American Digital Network again. Final on ESPN2 noon Saturday. And, I'll tell you what, Eric, here's to UCF winning today and then beating USF tomorrow and then beating either Wichita or Houston on Sunday, because that would certainly strengthen the resume big time. Because remember, Wichita's the top RPI team right now coming into the weekend out of the AAC at 32. Houston's at 35. USF's at 42. So the Knights have some work to do, but if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it. So where will we be able to see you? I know you're working for the digital network all this weekend, so give us an update on that.
Well, you mentioned the American Digital Network. It'll be on the conference's Facebook Live. It'll be on the YouTube page on the conference like they have been. I'll be joined by Sydney Gerbach, former Houston Cougar player. Sydney Gerbach. Haley Alton will be a part of the pre- and post-game coverage on America.org as well. I'll be a part of that. And if you have Cox Sports on your depending where you're listening to this, if you're in your area, if you have Cox Sports, we'll be on there as well on Thursday and Friday. As you mentioned, the schedule. Obviously, we kick off with Wichita State and Tulsa, a big rivalry game. That's their 50th meeting. Will be on Thursday. They used to play back from the Missouri Valley days. They play every year in a midweek. Now they're conference rivals. That's a heck of a matchup. That'll start at 10 a.m. Houston and East Carolina, they go way back. They go to Conference USA days. That'll be the 12:30 game, and then UCF will play at 4:00 against Memphis, and then USF in Connecticut at 6:30. But American Digital Network, if you have a Cox Sports channel, we'll be on that. Check your local listings, as they say, and I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of full circle for me on a personal note, Jeff. My first conference tournament was 2007 in Orlando, and UCF hosted the Conference USA tournament. And if you remember, we covered that. It was myself, our good friend Matt Dunaway, who was a Houston SID at the time, but he had chipped in on the broadcast, Ira Green. We all provided the audio coverage of every game of that tournament except for the championship game, which was televised on CSTV. So I was involved in, I don't know, there was probably like 10 or 11 games in that tournament. I probably did like 8 of them. So it's kind of full circle for me now that this is my 12th tournament, and now I'm going to be basically calling 6 games on every game except for the championship game. So it's kind of a full circle for me here from 2007 to 2018. So, it means a lot. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's a great tournament, and I think to showcase this great sport and a great league that it is, and wish for the best.
All right, man. I know I'll be watching on the American Digital Network, theamerican.org, and the Digital Network is also available on, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, YouTube and Facebook as well. So definitely worth checking out. So again, we'll send the link out as well. But Eric Lopez down in Tampa. Eric, enjoy the tournament. Have I was going to say have a good show, but have 6 good shows coming up Thursday and Friday. Enjoy and make sure you got the cough drops ready.
Cough drops, caffeine, you name it. I will be hunkered down. I'll be hunkered down. I'll be in a bunker in the Prince Bun. Yeah. It'll be, but it should be fun.
All right, man. Take it easy. Have fun. I'll talk to you.
Thanks, bud.
All right, and thanks to Eric for joining me there. Remember, he will be live Thursday and Friday, both sessions on Thursday, and then the Friday semifinals on the American Digital Network. Theamerican.org is where you want to go. So, all right. Let's check in with golf and tennis. And we'll start with golf here. We had, at least for women's golf, Kaylee Jones finished up her run in the NCAA regionals. Obviously, she was an individual qualifier. She finished tied for 46th place at 5 over par. So she will not advance to the Nationals, but congrats on Kaylee Jones on her participation in the Tallahassee Regional, 46th in a field of 96, but still an achievement to get there nonetheless. Jennifer Cupjo of Wake Forest, who's ranked number 10 in the country. She won the regional at Tallahassee. She was 15 under par. Wow. Let's see here. Women's tennis. All right. They begin their NCAA tournament journey down in Coral Gables. First round matchup against FIU, 11 a.m. on Friday, May the 11th. Friday, May the 11th at 11 a.m., UCF against FIU. And you can get the live scoring of that on UCFnights.com. They're already down there. They were sharing some photos from their trip down to Miami actually this afternoon. So best of luck to UCF women's tennis back in the NCAAs for the first time in a long time, 16 years. What else do we have going on here? Okay, so we talked about women's golf there at the Tallahassee Regional. Men's golf, they start their NCAA Regional on Monday in Kissimmee. They go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you can follow that on UCFnights.com. Rowing also. They're actually heading up to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, just outside of Philadelphia, for the American Athletic Conference Rowing Championship. It's an all-day, one-day event Saturday. That's May the 12th, and you can watch it on the American Digital Network. Again, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Saturday, UCF Rowing, looking to win a 4th consecutive conference championship is UCF Rowing. And track and field is going to have their American Athletic Conference Championship. It's being hosted by Cincinnati. That goes Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all day. And that is also on the American Digital Network. They actually they have that, and then the East Region Championships for the NCAAs are scheduled to take place May 24th on Thursday. That's what they're hoping to get to. But UCF, if they can get the job done in Cincinnati, then they will get to the NCAA. So there you have it. There's your wrap up there for the spring sports, with a lot of conference championships coming your way. So I'm looking forward to rowing. I'll actually be checking that out because aside from Saturday and the softball final, but I'm interested to see if they can pull it off again. Becky Kramer doing another awesome job for UCF rowing.
It's a dynasty, unsung dynasty out there on the water.
Oh, clearly the best. You want to talk about domination? That's what they've been doing. So, and you owe it to yourself, Brian, to get down to their facility on Lake Pickett. They've hosted some meets there before. I had the good fortune to go in there and actually following a meet, once a practice and then also a meet on Lake Pickett. And it's the most amazing sports facility you'll see. It really is fantastic. And there's a lot of athletes on the rowing team that they do it. They're not scholarship, as there are with a bunch of UCF teams, but particularly with rowing, they try out. And they're not and they're not scholarship athletes, but they dedicate themselves to this team, and it's fun to see them reap their rewards. So good for them. Hope they can come up with the championship here. So. All right, so as we finish up, Brian Murphy, what do you have coming up this week?
I hope to have a preview of the baseball series on the site. Maybe. We'll see.
Maybe.
If I have time. And I still there's so many things I have yet to write that I need to get out there. It'll happen, Jeff. Just believe in me.
There's time. Hey, look, we're good. We got all kinds of stuff going out there. I can always throw up another Adrian Killen's highlight video, and people.
I did enjoy that. Yeah. I was like, you know what? Okay, I see what it is.
I found a Mackenzie Milton one. A couple. Was it last week, right? And I was like, oh, that kind of worked. Let's find Adrian Killen's. I mean,
really. And maybe Otis Anderson next.
Okay, that's what. So let's put this out there. All right, UCF fans, you're listening to this podcast. Let me know what the next highlight video is you want to see, like which player. All right, send it to me, UCF_Banneret on Twitter. All right, I wanted to get that.
That's good,
and I'll find.
And then the last thing I'll say is about, again, it's funny that I'm saying this because again, it's the story I don't care about. But no matter what Scott Frost says, UCF fans. Just remember, it's still not going to take away the rings that were made up or any of the shirts and national championship clothes that were made.
Yeah, you don't have to return them to the bookstore.
the banner that wraps around the practice field and the lettering on the Roth Tower inside the stadium, those will still be there. This team will still consider itself national champions, and there's no reason why you can't do the same. Nothing Scott Frost says will change anything that's already happened. They still beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. That actually happened.
Hey, you know what I say? It's just embrace it and embrace being the squeaky wheel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, embrace being the squeaky wheel and calling out the system for what it is, and it's fantastic because I got news for you. There's a lot of people who are silently nodding their heads at UCF across the country right now because there's a lot of, like we talked about, there's a lot of FBS teams that feel like they're in the same boat with UCF, that no matter what they do, they won't get a fair shake. And there's also a lot of people who hate the SEC and really hate Alabama.
And speaking of which, if you can think whatever you want of the Scott Frost comments, but please stop caring what Greg McElroy has to say. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't matter what Scott Frost has to say, it really doesn't matter what Greg McElroy says. I see people out here getting very defensive. I want to save you from yourselves. Yeah. Stop it.
Plus, Mackenzie Milton already flamed Greg McElroy. You don't need to pile on. You don't need
people are doing undue stress to their own health. They're shortening their lifespans by yelling at Greg McElroy. Who cares? He's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to get hits in May on college football. There's nothing to talk about.
Gosh, it's fabulous, isn't it? I mean, thank God for football in May. Thank God for football in May. All right. Let's wrap this thing up. Thanks again to Eric for joining me earlier today from Tampa. You can follow him at Eric Lopez Elo. Thanks to you, Brian Murphy, Spokes_Murphy on Twitter.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
And thanks to you for listening. Remember, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Like us at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. Follow us there for all the latest as well. And follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Thanks also to our sponsor, the Unger Real Estate Group. We Sell Orlando is where you want to go for information on Sam and his crew. And thanks, of course, to you, the listener. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.